but also we have to look ahead. What awaits us if we go on like
this?
Most recent, if you've noticed, most of the countries, it's now a common practice that some countries, they have totally even disbanded social media.
Some kind of
some countries. No, some countries have totally. Most recent, Nigeria has had very, very bitter wars with Twitter. Until I think they had to sit down and what and all these things. You saw in America, there was a big clash between the then president, Donald Trump. The fact that even had to push him to start his own social media, I think called Truth Media, something like that. You know,
where they suspended accounts of a sitting president.
Absolutely. You go to, but why I'm quoting all these ones, you go to the Philippines scenario with the head of state, you go to come here, you go to Arab Emirates. For them, they even disband what we call WhatsApp calls. You can't call on a WhatsApp there. I think it's most of you who are people there, you know. You go to Middle East countries, there's what happened in Iran, Iraq, come back home here whenever it's time of election. Up to today, Facebook has issues. You understand? Go to what happened in this country that had elections. I think even in France, at some point, they had to had. Why am I saying this? I'm trying to show that this is not just a Ugandan problem, in as much as we want to hide our heads under the sun. The social media problem is becoming global. You know, at the peak of the practice of social media, the fear is that the failure to regulate it by the authors retain the command. You understand? Or what we call the manual. Yet, when they retain the manual, the sovereignties, the countries or the societies that suffer from the use of this that they have no control of are not part of the control or how the manual should be controlled. I don't know if you get my point. Now, because the author of the social media platforms has the manual, they're the ones who know I put off Chirabo, I leave Chirabo on. Now, we don't know what they base on to leave you on or to put you.
Oh, I remember recently in Uganda towards elections, those that were following events when some accounts of NRM diehards were suspended because of what Facebook thought, they call it, is it hate and all that. But then the government wrote and said, but also have these accounts that we feel are spreading hatred and all this.
And they refused.
And they refused to suspend.
That's what I'm saying. Now, because the manual, the handler, you have no control over them. Now, that brings a gap. And that's why the examples I first gave you, that's where the problem comes in. So, the only button left for these sovereignties is
regulation,
legislation or regulation.
Now, this is where I again put this to you. When you look at what we are talking about today, because these were about 5 amendments in the Computer Misuse Act, is this regulation or is it suppression? Because I think this is the question to many Ugandans now, that this law, is it coming to really regulate or is it coming to suppress Ugandans?
You see, the law is a horse. I don't know if you've heard of such a statement. And the interpretation, or what some people say, the law is a shark, or lawyers are sharks. The reason is hidden in what you're saying. What you will consider as suppression, I'll consider as legislation. When you hear Muhammad in Sedeko and the mind behind the bringing of this private members bill, then, now that is actually legislation, was not the validation of his assertions are important and are beautiful to listen to.
Definitely.
You understand? Because he gives the evidence to every other aspect he brings into play. Okay? You will talk about the widespread of misinformation, the widespread of abuse, what has been brought controversy, hate speech, just to mention but a few. And the evidence is all over. On top of that, the government has been eagerly waiting to answer what I told you, that they need to have their own sort of manual away from the author. You know, the Zuckerbergs of this world have their manuals because they're the authors of Facebook. But government has to have its own sort of control, because in the absence of their own manual, they cease to be a sovereign or to reign, which word sovereign also has an attachment to reigning. They cease to reign over, and then that will make them no longer in control, which defeats the purpose of being a sovereign. You get it? So this legislation, in as much as you talk about essentialness or legislation or suppression, the primary purpose of this law, in my opinion, was for government to have a glimpse of the manual, that we must have some sort of control. So the other discussion is what now we get into. Does these, or do these enactments, or call them amendments or additions to the act, give government a grip to the manual, to have some power to control? That's the question. And this is the purpose. People have been jumping onto the simple things, the face of it. What? Hate speech? Those ones are simple. But you need to understand the spirit. On the desk of His Excellency the President, I understand there are many laws. But why did he first sign? Because they have
Those people that day signed about 4 of them.
Yeah, but how many are pending between you and me? So the government needed to have a bit of grip. Previously, of course, one would say, yeah, but there have been previous litigations in relation to such, the Stella Nyanzis, you've had the Kakwenza, the what. But they have also been challenged. If you had most of them, how many of them are still in prison? You get, there have been loopholes. So this, in that angle, government benefits. Now, answering the question whether it is actual legislation, it is legislation as a matter of fact, because you went through the procedures. But if you want to discuss it on a platter of credibility in terms of suppression, or actually sensible legislation, suppression, you see, when you accepted to get into democracy, and together as a country, you accepted free debate on every national matter. Now, countries like Uganda and many others have stumbled on democracy, because it is not democracy as crafted by Uganda, it is democracy as imparted by whoever. Because it is an imparted democracy, you must keep it in check. I don't know what you call suppression in the eyes of government is keeping the imparted democracy
in check.
You get it? Because you have no contribution to this thing they call democracy. You had no contribution. Uganda had no contribution in defining the parameters of democracy. The only thing it was left with, put measures that will keep this thing, this foreign thing they're imparting on them, called democracy, in check, which any country will do. Not just Uganda.
Most in this 21st century.
Any country will do.
Yes.
Because we are having countries like Uganda who are still suffering from the footprints of colonialism. Now, it depends on how smart are your leaders. And leadership entails what kind of legislation. I can give you an example of some of the articles in the Constitution that must keep democracy in a check. Some of them were like term
limits,
age
limit.
Those were brought in to keep democracy. But since then they have been, the democracy has been adjusted by those parameters. But those ones were put in.
And we say, will of the majority, the winner has it all.
And I can tell you, yes, I can tell you, I was not present in the CN, but from what I have appreciated consistently, some of these parameters that must keep democracy in a check were not an idea of Uganda. It is evident, and time has proved that because it's a matter of time that they have been disbanded.
I will tell you that, well, a constitution is a living document.
No wonder, of course, there's a provision for amendment.
There's a provision for amendment.
As long as an article in the constitution is not one of those what called entrenched. So, there's the fact that we are trying to widen now the scope of the so-called
democracy.
That is why we have such legislations.
Now, Felix, maybe for our viewer, briefly, I want to take you through the 5 amendments in this that now are putting Ugandans at tenterhooks. And these include, that is, enhancing the provision on unauthorized access to information or data to strengthen the protection of the right to privacy. So this hacking, you go, you get someone's password, or you go, you're able to expose some of their private, maybe photos, private issues, because you have the capacity. You know, you call them computer genius. Or maybe it could be someone's phone. They have their pictures. I don't want to mention their name, how you term those pictures, but they're in their cell phone. You land on their password, then you continue sharing, sending out. My friend, that will earn you imprisonment. Then prohibit the sharing of any information related to a child without authorization from a parent or guardian or any other person having authority to make decisions on behalf of the child. You go, you share. Wakafunyeko, you keep on sharing, or you publish that information personally. You find this child or engaged in an activity, it could even be immoral, but these are children. And for you decide to capture and send. Well, that would land you into, though some have questioned that, saying maybe this child is in trouble. We've seen many being battered, tortured, and I get this video, it goes viral, and security or police or concerned people come and act. A child is being married off, I get this video. So that is also some area, but of course that may be depend on the discretion of the judge. Then we have prohibit the sending or sharing of information that promotes hatred. That is also one of the areas. Then provides for prohibition of sending misleading, malicious, and unsolicited information. Well, there are many have asked, so what does that mean? Who determines what is malicious? Who determines what is hate? Not well defined. But this brings me to social media is tricky. You may want to locate the source, and you fail. Someone is using different names.
Fail,
someone
but
is
the law will not fail. I can
someone
tell you.
is, you know, and you can't with evidence.
I don't think.
Let me give you an example. I remember the case of Zake. When it was
Zake has a lot of cases.
Now this one in Parliament, what that led him to lose his opportunity as a commissioner of Parliament. How there were these old legal terms, jargon. No, this wasn't him. Bring evidence, then you have to write where to prove it was him. All these, how applicable do you think this law?
I think the law is very applicable. I'll tell you honestly. The only people who will have problems with it are people who, but they are investigating.
Also, when someone has an intention to,
you know, that can't stop the law from being in place. Or that can't limit legislation. That how applicable. Let the law be in place. Then that will be answered later. However, when you read those ones, I think I have had challenges with saying the applicability of what you're saying. Definition of some words. But look here. There are challenges in the law, that's a matter of fact. But the question is, shouldn't we having an argument on protecting the victims? Why is your worry so much about the offenders, not the ones victimized?
Because
you seem to worry so much about he who will offend, not the ones who are going to be offended. No one is talking about you've quickly been excited about what if, the what ifs. Who is speaking about the victims or the would-be victims? I think we have all been victims at some point, and we have all probably been offenders at some point because of lack of knowledge. The clear sensational challenge about this law, in my opinion, and mostly about the amendments you did mention earlier, Robert, is that we continuously, because of what I said earlier, and what we call cast on democracy, there's always a political conflict. There's always about any matter, but even food. Even if one of the things you will look at and you're like, really? There will always be a political dimension because of the ununderstood democracy. So that's why you have these sensational appreciations that someone will ask, what is hate speech?
Misleading information,
But
unsolicited information.
for example, you give an example, taking photos of a child and what and what and what. What's the duty? Is it your duty to circulate that video? The law does not the law does not incriminate you for taking the video, but search you
Lating.
without
Permission.
take the video, take it to the authorities. But no one is talking about that. Everyone is saying, hey, the video, taking the video, that is not, that's what the law is. The law is talking about. Thereafter,
What do you do with it?
again, we are going to come to the challenges of the law, but let's also look at, why don't we discuss the victim? Why are we choosing only the offender?
The would-be person to be protected.
One of the honorables was saying, people should be able to defend themselves. No, not, but one of the canonical duties, and I use the word canonical technically, of a state or government is to protect
It's people.
Written in red or black, if you want bold, is to protect. Because Chirabo, you may have the ability to fight your battles on social media. There's another person who will be affected, but they have nowhere to
Report. Have the ability.
You get it.
Now,
So, in as much as there are challenges, we need to also have a fair discussion about the would-be victims, not just the offender. Why are we having the argument just about, but the offender, hey, won't they? How about, who's talking about the effect of some of these things?
Now, Felix rightly said that there is someone that has to be protected. But let's also look at using a law. For example, I'll give you one, POMA. If you remember the times of the campaigns we just completed, much as it had challenges, we had, that's the Public Order Management Act, our viewer, which is abbreviated as POMA. And we saw many times politicians came out and said, this law is against us. It is used to suppress us. Where you find some people don't go through the procedure. Us, when we try to follow what the law says, there are a number of encumbrances, there are technicalities brought in to fail us. We would see where even NRM Secretariat came out and said, police, even ours, arrest them. But one would tell you, how can I be a territorial commander and maybe I'm going to arrest maybe my own minister because maybe he's carried out this. So there are such fears. Come to recently when the UPDF gazetted the red ballet as part of their uniform. Army attire. We saw people who were arrested.
Up till today, by the way.
Up till today. Some general court martial. Today, as we are speaking, because I think times of pressure has reduced, people are hosted on TV with the red ballets. People are moving with the red ballets. The law seems not to be, if you know, maybe one time when they feel need to, they will again round up people with red ballets. So, with such incidents,
again,
you know,
everything you're saying,
such challenges,
everything you're saying falls back in my preamble. We are stumbling on imparted
democracy.
Those are all the evidences that because we are hosting something we have no contribution to. You get if they wake up one day, Robert, and they tell you from today onwards, you're going to start putting on dresses and high heels, and you're going to do Maria. I don't know if that's what's called Maria. Hold poor man, you even emboldened. Now, and yet you have to do it, Tandika. So you'll have to start finding ways that when I put on high heels like this, I've fallen. That is what happened to Uganda. When you see the application, the challenges in the pomers of this world, you're seeing a country stumbling on. And that is a two-sided. Because both the government and the seeming opposition do not know how to deal with this thing they call democracy. You get the point? When you talk about democracy in this country, you're inviting hate, you're inviting fights, you're inviting abuses. You get the point, because they have put a very big ditch between opposition and government. That's why some people even don't want to greet because they think
you drive the same car, your NUPAM, NRM, you've been bought off, you're gone, you're traitor.
That is now what you see in the applicability of the pomers of this world. And
well, allow me to cut you short, Felix, and I'll be going for a very short martial break, and when we return, we'll still be diving into the Computer Misuse Act and, of course, the amendments that were made West Nawalo, because His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, did assent to that, and now you can be held culpable and charged. We'll return shortly.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
It's better to foster respect instead of fear and pain.
Cause a good school equals a better life.
Raising voices.
Effects of climate change are glaring. We have floods, landslides, drought, food insecurity. His Excellency the President has been very passionate about this, and he has explained the effect of destroying our natural resources, especially the wetlands, and cutting the forests. As Cabinet, as government, we have approved a 10 years restoration program. We are going to provide alternative sources of livelihood. And the call is that people should leave the wetlands. And we have started from today evicting people from Lubiji wetlands. And we are going to roll out the whole country. Our prayer is that those who have not yet been reached, please live peacefully. We are going to provide alternative source of livelihood as a government. Those who are still engaged in manufacturing and selling the plastic, especially the illegal non-buveras, we are going to close onto them. They are also a menace to our country. We look forward very soon having sodas back in the breakable bottles rather than the plastics which are being thrown all over to litter. I want to call upon Ugandans, let's conserve and let's use sustainably our natural resources. I thank you.
This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Water and Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, Uganda National Meteorological Authority, with support from Government of Uganda, Green Climate Fund, and the United Nations Development Programme.
I remember the lockdown, when the streets were empty and our lives disrupted, when businesses closed and our livelihoods hung in the balance. Hospitals were full. We lost loved ones, jobs, and hope. Our children couldn't study anymore. We cannot let this happen again. We should not go back. Get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and join the millions of Ugandans who are already vaccinated.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Welcome back from that short break. Thank you for keeping it with us here on UBC TV. It is Good Morning Uganda Extra. I'm Robert Chirabo, Nyonyi with my colleague Felix Nkunda, with whom we are discussing, that is the recently amended Computer Misuse Act that now makes it very tight for people who want to misuse internet or other forms of social media. You have to be more careful, but you also equally have to be more knowledgeable. Now, Felix, laws are made in Parliament. But
not all laws, though.
Not all laws, though. Or some, I want to say, are pushed or God, there are many ways. Felix, let's go with that.
Okay, those are made in Parliament.
So, whose role is it to ensure the citizenry gets to understand and know these laws and appreciate them? Because much as we have those that have run to court, much as we have those that feel this is an infringement on their rights that are God-given, you're an activist when it comes to human rights. Much as we have those that are saying you have closed the physical space, now you're coming up to close the digital space as well. I saw some holding placards, we can't breathe. There is some goodness in this law, but who has the duty to do that, to ensure people are aware?
First and foremost, in relation to that, at the point when a law becomes a law, there are many stages it goes through. Actually, at the time when it becomes law, the belief or the practice should be that at that point it should be popular enough. There's debate, there must be debate. And debate that is national, because this is a national. So the expectation of the principalities under legislation are not just about passing, but there must be some debate that must be steered before even it is a law. The belief is that this debate is what creates awareness. And the reason why there must be debate prior to legislation is to avert the other saying that ignorance of the law.
It's not an excuse.
Yes. That is how that comes into play. Because the expectation is that before it is a law, there has been various and wide debate. You get it? So the question is now, is that actually done? Or we only get to know about it when it is ascended? Or we had a bit of it. There was an historical thing. But was there a debate?
Take the answer the court. Take the answer the court.
Was there a debate? Okay. Now, in the absence of debate, there are various channels which we can revisit to answer that lacuna or to cover or to ratify that missed process. One of the channels is we must task the ones who made the laws at all levels to engage, which is what even one of the things we are doing. The only reason we are talking about is because there's a lot of friction. What you're seeing, the people going into court and what, these are some of the challenges that there was no engagement prior. You get it? And even if there was, probably it wasn't wide because of countries like what we have, resources. We don't have.
And when you look at our legislators, I've seen a number of bills before they come they are passed as laws. And I think or it goes back to the democratic thing you've just talked about. I want to give you an example. There was a time we had this land amendment bill. And you see, it was funny. Legislators under the NRM were saying this is good for us. Those in opposition were saying this is an evil thing coming your way. We had Uganda, which had a team that was traversing the region, telling people, "Wakanye take her." We had this, even when you have the term and age limit, there are the legislators who will go and they are telling people, this is the best for us. Others are saying, well, this is poison coming.
That's the thing. And because of what, again, the reason why
the nationalistic
I brought in the aspect
is
of
nowhere.
A caste democracy. Okay? People have termed themselves permanent enemies. Chitabo is in which party? Yeah. You get it? So, as the law is coming, others look at it as a war, an opportunity for them to get popularity.
Yeah.
That even what will seemingly be true, someone will say it is not true because it helps them get popularity. So, the biggest challenge of legislation, as you asked, is an understood democracy. If you remember, one of the challenges that Donald Trump faced was even some of his members in the Republican said, no. Okay?
It's not part of the American dream.
That was the word. Does that reflect what we believe in as Americans, away from being Republican or Democrats? Because they understood the democracy they are executing is their own craft. No one imparted that democracy on USA. That's why it is easy for them to appreciate it. That they will appreciate on principle. That when John McCain dies, he will write and say the person who I want to give my eulogies is the person who won in an election against me, Obama. Can you see that here? People here celebrate death of other opposite party members. One would ask, why not? These things all work together. And these are, I'm trying to give you what we call the circumstantial evidences that will prove to you that even this law has all these challenges, because one party is saying we must find a way of containing these people they call the opposition. Okay? Because they emanated from a process that we are not part of or we don't know how to handle, called democracy. So you must find a way of containing them. And that's why whatever would seemingly come from this other people they call the government will be unfair. Because they will not enact a law that will be in the general good to promote ideas of the others, because they want to make it seem like it's a fight. But is that the democracy we are talking about? You get it? It's good you gave an example of the Poma. All these things are creations of a bad democracy or a misunderstood
democracy.
This computer misuse, this how many, and this is the challenge. I know people who have tagged themselves as NRF bloggers, by the way. Some of them proudly say it. They abuse, they have big words. I've never seen any of them in court. Honestly and truly, I think this is I'm talking about this because these are facts. This is what we call this is res ipsa loquita. It is out there for anyone to see. It is judicial notice.
Even their presence, the first thing that comes to your mind is,
but one person came out and even removed, someone even came and removed their trousers and boxers. There's a video I saw. I don't know if you remember. And they are proud to attribute themselves to a political, to that level that someone undressed.
And it was very okay.
I've never seen that person even in their LC disciplinary. I don't know. So that's why those people are telling you, but Robert, you people, this is not, because look, there's unfairness. The simple reason is that I gave you why you can't avoid these clashes. One party has to get a grip on power, and they will not, in the 21st century, they will no longer use guns and sticks. They will use illegal means to suppress you. In Kampala, it's called working smart. You expect that he's going to come and slap you. The man will just...
Very technical beating.
Simple. So, there's one party that is giving you a technical suppression because of, it is now trying to contain. China, when you put in to dress in a dress, all of a sudden, and high heels, how do you contain the situation? You have to forge a gate, find a way how you walk so that you shake a buttock like what they do in their dresses. But it's not an easy thing. And this is what we are stumbling on as a government. That democracy. Many mistakes are still going to happen. I'm telling you, many of those are coming. The Pomas, who saw them coming? These misuse, and many are still coming because human nature is made that you always find a way around. People are going to find a way around it, and there will be another law, I can tell you.
Well, very interesting discussion here, and of course, one of the things is you must interest yourself to be very knowledgeable of this law. More so if you are a person that uses social media so much. And remember, one of the things that is very clear, even sharing, you may not be the author of that content, but sharing, or in case you're managing an account, you'll be
aiding a crime.
Aiding a crime. So it's not all about saying, hit my inbox if you want, and all that, and all our brothers,
sharing a state's money.
Sharing, and all, well, this is something that you must be very careful, read the law, understand the law, because unless otherwise, it is what we have now, and I believe if well enforced, many of our people may find themselves in tough times. But Felix, there's also the word commonly now used, selective justice. This is where some are saying, why new? Because even those that we have been able to implicate. There is one of the people that once in a while, when I go to some app, I find there was a young man who I think attacked her. And even with the weak laws, he uses her name, is it Dr. Sefco or something like that? I saw him paraded marching in the court, whatever, you know, and I hear even that I've not followed so much, but prosecution went ahead and all that. Though it is funny that a person whose head is made of glass threw stones at another. But I find that a bit funny. We've seen the examples you've given, the likes of Kapwenzi, the Dr. Stella Nyanzi, this girl that recently celebrated, that was inhuman of it, but still laws got her. You don't celebrate death and all that.
Jakanas.
We've seen the Jakanas, Naduri. So we think, but also there's a question. When do you apply? So selective justice, as we wind up, is a fear of many under this. And they're wondering, didn't we have sufficient? Did we even need it?
Of course, there are very many particular sections that are replicated in various laws. When you talk about the defamation, the slanders, assault,
Child Protection Act,
all those ones are covered. But everything, Bob, you're asking will throw you back to what I said. What you want to call selective justice is again brought into play by a democracy that is misunderstood. There is no way in such a democracy that is staggering. You expect someone who is protecting. Because remember, I said, you have put a situation, democracy lately has been defined as a war. You have a Chirabo that side, as a Felix this side. Funny thing, you even give the names. Opposition,
not government in waiting. Opposition, you're here to oppose.
When you go to the UK, you know how they call the people in the opposition? You just have parties. You have the Conservatives and the
Republicans,
the liberals, and you get, when you go to the UK, you have the Democrats and the Republicans. You have no word like opposition. You get the point. But the evidence of the poor managing of a democracy, because I told you you're giving Chirawe a dress. After like 30 how many years, Yambari Stetei, today onwards, you're going to be a woman. To act like you're not, but you're going to act like
you are
a woman. Imagine, and just think about it. Oh, get a lady today, or madam, tell her from today onwards, you're starting to act like a
man.
You know how hard it is. Now, that's the thing. In Uganda, we have opposition and government. You can even hear, as I've said, the wording. Go to other developments.
Leader of opposition.
You like people have to quote the US. There is Republicans and Democrats. In US, in the UK, you have the House of Conservatives. You know? That shows you selective justice, or the application of fairness of applying, cannot be possible because of the kind of positions we have given each other. You don't expect justice from an opposition. You would be a fool to think that you're going to expect justice from the person you are
opposing. Well, in the interest of time, Felix, I just want to thank you for your time. And of course, our dear viewers, thank you so much for being with us from the hour of 6:30 when we opened with Good Morning Uganda. And this is Good Morning Uganda, an extension of Good Morning Uganda. Please make it a date with us tomorrow from the hour of 6. We'll be here to ensure that we give you all the relevant information that you need to kickstart your day, but also with some light moments. I and the team there for you to spice up your morning. God bless you. Stay safe. Ebola is with us. Please, please be careful. And COVID has never left as well. See you tomorrow, God willing.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello?
Hello?
This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a